The call came in just after sunrise. A child, a 2-year-old, was missing. His name was Amari Nicholson. He was last seen at an apartment complex on Paradise Road in Las Vegas, a place where people came and went, where noise from the street blended into the lives of those inside. It wasn't the kind of place where a child could just vanish. But that's exactly what had happened. His mother's boyfriend, Terrell Rhodes, said Amari had been taken, snatched away by a relative, someone claiming they had permission to pick him up. That was the story, the explanation given to the police, the one that spread through the apartment complex and beyond. But as the hours passed, something was off. There were no urgent phone calls from the family to confirm the child's whereabouts, no frantic texts, no proof that anyone had actually come to get him. Amari's mother wasn't home at the time. She had left for a trip to another state, trusting that her son was safe. By the time she got back, everything had changed. The search began immediately. Police canvassed the area, checking security footage, knocking on doors, asking neighbors if they had seen anything. His photo spread across social media. People were watching. Strangers were waiting for updates. And in the middle of it all was Terrell Rhodes, the last person to see Amari, the one repeating the same explanation to police, to reporters, to anyone who asked. But something was wrong. And soon, the truth about what really happened to Amari Nicholson would come out. A child's voice, light, innocent, and full of life. One day it's there. The next, it's gone. This is where 2-year-old Amari Nicholson lived. It's where he played, where he laughed, and where his mother tucked him in at night. It's also where, on the morning of May 5th, 2021, he disappeared. He was a son, a nephew, a little boy with a whole life ahead of him. Until suddenly, he wasn't there anymore. Las Vegas, a city known for its lights, its entertainment, and its noise. But in one small apartment on Paradise Road, the city's distractions faded into something much quieter, something much more terrifying. Because inside, a mother had come home to find her child missing, and nothing about the story made sense. Amari Nicholson lived here with his mother, Taylor Nicholson, and her boyfriend, Terrell Rhodes. At 2 years old, he was full of energy, a toddler just beginning to explore the world. But on the morning of May 5th, he was gone. Terrell Rhodes was the only adult home at the time, and according to him, Amari hadn't simply wandered off. He'd been taken. It was a story that should have been easy to confirm. A family member, supposedly an aunt, had come to retrieve Amari. But when police questioned Taylor, she denied sending anyone. No one in Amari's family had picked him up. There was no aunt at all. At first, the case appeared to be a custody dispute gone wrong. But something was off. Authorities pressed Rhodes for more details. His answers stayed the same, word for word. And then, something happened. To understand what happened to Amari, we have to go back, before the news coverage, before the search parties, before the tears. What happened in the final hours before anyone realized he was gone? According to Taylor, she left for Colorado on May 3rd, leaving Amari in Rhodes's care. They had done this before. She trusted him. He was supposed to watch over her child until she returned. But while she was away, something happened. And by the time she landed, Amari was no longer safe. When a child goes missing, time is everything. The first 24 hours are critical. Every second that passes makes it harder to find them alive. As word spread, the community mobilized. Flyers went up. Volunteers began searching parks, alleyways, and even abandoned buildings. They held on to hope. They believed Amari was out there somewhere, waiting to be found. But as days passed, hope started turning into doubt. The story wasn't adding up. And there was one person everyone was starting to look at, Terrell Rhodes. Then, just as the case seemed to be stalling, everything changed. What police would soon discover would shock everyone. Amari Nicholson was still missing. The search continued, the questions remained, and the one person who had all the answers was about to break. What happened behind closed doors? What led to the moment that changed everything? Stay with us as we uncover the horrifying truth. If you're invested in this case and want to follow every detail, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. If you found this story important, leave a comment below. Your thoughts matter. And if you believe more people need to know about Amari, share this video to help spread awareness. Let's keep this conversation going. Thank you for watching. Before the tragedy unfolded, before his name was spoken with anger and sorrow, Terrell Rhodes was just another man in the background of life. But who was he really? Born and raised in an environment that some say shaped him into who he would become, Rhodes's early years remain largely unknown to the public. Was there a history of aggression, a trail of warning signs that went unnoticed? Or was he just another man who hid his true self behind a carefully crafted mask? Those who knew him paint contrasting pictures. Some described him as quiet, seemingly normal. Others hinted at a darker side, a temper that flared when things didn't go his way. But one thing is clear. His life changed the moment he met Taylor Nicolson. What began as a relationship filled with affection soon turned into something far more complicated. Their bond, once perceived as loving, was riddled with arguments, tension, and moments of uncertainty. How did they meet? Was their relationship built on trust, or were there warning signs of volatility? Sources suggest their relationship evolved quickly, but the stability of their bond was often questioned. Some described it as a romance filled with love and affection. Others saw cracks beneath the surface. But it was his relationship with Taylor Nicolson that would bring him into Amari's life. Was Taylor aware of the man she had let into her life? And more importantly, did she ever suspect that her son, Amari, was in danger? To a mother, a child is everything. A heartbeat outside the body, a love that knows no limits. But for Terrell Rhodes, was Amari Nicholson a child to be loved, or an obstacle standing in his way? Witnesses recall interactions that seemed, at best, cold, at worst, troubling. Some say he acted like a father figure. Others, however, recall moments where his patience seemed to wear thin. Were there warning signs of abuse? Small bruises dismissed as accidents? Did the child's innocent eyes ever reveal a silent plea for help? Or was Amari too young to understand the storm building around him? Whatever the truth may be, one fact remains. On the day Amari vanished, Terrell Rhodes was the last person to see him alive. On May 5th, 2021, a desperate call was made. Amari Nicholson was missing. Terrell Rhodes had a story, a seemingly airtight account of what had happened. According to him, a woman claiming to be a family member had come to take Amari. He had no choice, he said. He believed she had the mother's permission. He had simply handed the boy over. But something didn't sit right with investigators. Why hadn't the mother been informed immediately? Why did Rhodes' story seem rehearsed? And why? Did the evidence contradict everything he had claimed? Police began retracing Rhodes' steps. If he had truly given Amari to a relative, there would be proof. A witness, a text, surveillance footage. But there was nothing. Detectives compared his statements with the timeline of events. Inconsistencies emerged. Where was he exactly when Amari disappeared? What time did he contact Taylor Nicolson? And why did certain details seem to change every time he was questioned? Then, the first crack. Security footage from nearby properties. Neighbors who saw something they weren't meant to see. A timeline that no longer made sense. The evidence wasn't adding up, and neither was Terrell Rhodes' story. Taylor Nicholson, Amari's mother, initially stood by his side. But as the walls closed in, even she began to question the man she thought she knew. Had she trusted the wrong person? Had she unknowingly placed her child in the hands of a monster? Inside the interrogation room, the air was thick with tension. Rhodes sat across from seasoned investigators who had heard every excuse, every lie imaginable. They watched his body language, the subtle shifts, the nervous tics, the hesitation before answering simple questions. Experts later reviewed his interviews and pointed out telltale signs of deception. He avoided direct eye contact. His breathing changed. And then, his story shifted. Again, as investigators peeled back the layers of Rhodes' story, they found a puzzle that didn't quite fit. Every detail he provided led to more questions than answers. Where was Rhodes when Amari disappeared? Did his timeline match reality? As authorities compared his statements with facts, discrepancies emerged. Police weren't just asking questions anymore. They were closing in. As news of Amari's disappearance spread, the public demanded answers. Social media exploded with theories. The community came together to search for the missing child. But one person stood out. One person seemed more nervous than anyone else. Terrell Rhodes. And police were no longer asking if he was involved. They were preparing to prove it, the moment of truth. Investigators had gathered enough evidence to press harder. The walls were closing in. There was nowhere left to run. Surveillance footage, witness accounts. Then the unthinkable happened. Terrell Rhodes broke. He cracked. And with his breakdown came the horrifying truth. Was it guilt? The weight of the evidence? The relentless questioning? Was it intentional? An accident? Or something far more terrifying? In a cold, emotionless confession, Rhodes admitted what no one wanted to believe. Amari was gone. He had done the unthinkable. According to his account, it wasn't premeditated. It was a moment of anger, frustration, and then silence. The details of that night remain haunting. The final moments of a child who should have been safe. The panic that followed. The attempts to cover up what could never be hidden. With his confession, the case took a new turn. But the damage had been done, and the world would never forget Amari Nicholson. An outpouring of grief. The public, once holding on to hope, now faced a grim reality. The search ended in heartbreak. The news no one wanted to hear. Amari was gone. Amari was never coming home. The heartbreaking discovery that confirmed everyone's worst fears. His mother, devastated. The community, enraged. And Terrell Rhodes, facing the consequences of his choices. But one question still lingers. Why? And could this tragedy have been prevented? Rhodes had confessed, but what came next? Did he plead guilty? Did he face trial? And what sentence did he receive? The justice system took over. A deep dive into the legal ramifications and how the justice system handled the case. Beyond the courtroom, a larger conversation emerged, one about protecting innocent children. This case sparked movements to protect children from dangerous environments. If you found this story compelling and want to support more in-depth crime investigations, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps us continue bringing these important stories to light. When the truth finally surfaced, authorities wasted no time. Terrell Rhodes was arrested and charged with the murder of Amari Nicholson. The prosecution meticulously built its case, laying out the evidence that pointed to one conclusion: this was no accident. But Rhodes had his own defense. What strategy did his legal team attempt? Did they claim a lack of intent, a moment of uncontrolled rage, or something entirely? The courtroom became the next battleground for justice. The trial gripped the nation. Inside the courtroom, emotions ran high as key testimonies painted a picture of what really happened behind closed doors. Family members, forensic experts, and investigators all took the stand, unraveling the dark and disturbing truth. The prosecution presented damning evidence, interrogation footage, phone records, and forensic findings. The defense pushed back, trying to cast doubt, but could they overcome the weight of the facts? As each witness spoke, the tension in the room thickened. As the case moved forward, an unexpected turn emerged, a plea deal. Instead of enduring the full extent of a grueling trial, Rhodes chose to plead guilty. But why? Did he finally accept responsibility, or was this simply a strategy to avoid a harsher sentence? When the final judgment was handed down, justice had spoken. But was it enough? Was the sentence fitting for the crime committed? Outside the courtroom, reactions were mixed. Some believed it was a step toward closure, while others felt it could never undo the damage done. And yet, one question still lingered in everyone's mind. Could this tragedy have been prevented? How did the jury react? What did Taylor Nicholson have to say? And when the verdict drew near, the entire nation held its breath. This wasn't the first time a child suffered at the hands of a mother's partner. In another crime case, Nathan Bridges pleaded guilty to the brutal drowning of his girlfriend's young son. But what led to this horrifying act? Investigators discovered that Bridges had a history of violent behavior, something that had gone unnoticed until it was too late. When questioned, he claimed he had simply lost control, but evidence suggested something far more disturbing. After killing the child, Bridges went to great lengths to conceal the body, hiding it beneath the floorboards of their home. The mother, devastated, later admitted she had overlooked warning signs. Brandon Lee Toslin's case sent shockwaves through the country. He was accused of murdering his girlfriend's 4-year-old son and storing his lifeless body in a freezer for months. The details were beyond disturbing. Toslin had reportedly isolated the mother, controlling every aspect of her life, ensuring she couldn't reach out for help. When she finally managed to slip a desperate note to her daughter's school, pleading for someone to call 911, authorities rushed to the scene, only to uncover a truth no one was prepared for. What drove Toslin to commit such a heinous act? Experts dissect his behavior, comparing it to other cases of prolonged abuse and control. What compels someone to commit such unthinkable crimes? To not only take an innocent life, but to go to great lengths to cover it up? Criminal psychologists have studied patterns in cases like these, uncovering unsettling similarities. Many of these individuals exhibit traits of narcissism, possessiveness, and explosive anger. Some have past records of domestic abuse, while others show a chilling detachment from empathy. How can society recognize these red flags before another tragedy unfolds? And what role does a victim's environment play in preventing or enabling such crimes? The answers may be unsettling, but they are crucial in understanding how to protect the most vulnerable among us. Stay with us as we explore how the justice system responds to these cases and what changes are needed to prevent more tragedies like these. We have retraced the tragic timeline of Amari Nicholson's disappearance, the unraveling deception of Terrell Rhodes, and the devastating aftermath that shook an entire community. From the heartbreaking initial search to the shocking confession, the legal proceedings, and the lessons learned, this case serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of innocent lives. This case highlights the crucial need for vigilance in protecting children, the importance of reporting early signs of abuse, and the role of the legal system in ensuring justice is served. It raises questions about the people we trust around our loved ones and whether enough is being done to prevent such tragedies. What are your thoughts on the justice system's handling of this case? Should sentencing for crimes against children be more severe? Share your opinions in the comments. If any new developments arise, we will provide updates to keep this discussion relevant and informative. This story is not just content, it is a real tragedy. We honor Amari's memory by treating every detail with care and respect. Every fact presented is sourced from credible outlets to uphold the integrity of this case. Evil does not always come as a stranger. It often exists within the walls of trust. How many warning signs do we ignore before tragedy strikes? How do we, as a society, ensure that justice is not just a reaction, but a prevention? This story is more than just a tragic case. It's a wake-up call. Child abuse thrives in silence, and it takes a community to protect the most vulnerable among us. If this case has moved you, let it also inspire action. Speak up for children who cannot speak for themselves. Support organizations that fight for justice. Be aware of the warning signs and never turn a blind eye. Now I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this case? How can we, as a society, do better to protect children? Leave your comments below. If you found this video insightful, give it a like and subscribe for more in-depth crime analysis. And most importantly, share this story so that stories like Amari's are never forgotten. Justice must always be served, and awareness is the first step toward justice. Together, we can create a safer world for our children.